Okay, hello everybody. Today a new video. Generally I'm doing a video each time after a proof of concept for a customer. So this is a real use case. Okay, I can describe the use case. It's very simple. The customer has a WebLogic cluster 12214 and an Oracle Db RAC on-premise. Okay. The Oracle Db RAC on-premise will migrate to ExaCC, okay, 19C. So the new database was a RAC on ExaCC in version 19C. The goal for the customer is to be able to run this architecture, migrating the database from on-premise to ExaCC. Okay. Concerning WebLogic, there is a singleton that is running on a managed server. And when this managed server is down, then the singleton service will automatically migrate to another managed service. And so you will not have a stop for this singleton. Okay? To do that, for the WebLogic cluster, the feature is whole server migration. Okay? So it's automatic. It is due to the feature whole server migration. So if you want to activate that feature, first you need a rack. I'm using there a rack on OCI, and I have two nodes, Rac 1 and Rac 2. For your information, you must know that I created this rack in 1 hour and just 1 minute configuration. So it's very, very easy today to use Oracle Db RAC on the cloud with OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Okay. And I created 2 bastion sessions because the rack is not accessible from internet, only from private IP. Okay. And so I have a bastion service for Rac 1 and Rac 2. Okay. And I can use the port forwarding for the Rac 1 and the Rac 2 on my laptop. On my laptop, I have a cluster with an admin server, one managed server number 1 and one managed server number 2. So the first step is to create the data source for the whole server migration feature. First data source is a generic data source, okay, that is using a URL, a direct URL to the Rac 1. So you should not use, in this case, a URL with a scan address for Rac, okay? In fact, if you have WebLogic cluster with Rac, you have only 2 options. The first option is to use active grid link. This is a specific data source for Oracle Rac, but you need a license to use it. The license is WebLogic Suite. The customer doesn't have this license, so I'm going to use a multi-data source. Okay, and with a multi-data source, we use direct URL, okay, and not the scan URL of the Rac. So the data source number 1, a direct URL to Rac 1. The data source number 2, a direct URL to the Rac 2. And a multi-data source that is using the data source Rac 1 and the data source Rac 2. After that, on the cluster, migration, okay, I give for migration basis for whole server migration, I have 2 options, database or consensus. Database is very nice because it is the only option where I can have a member desk detector enabled. So the stop of a server will be automatically detected. I give the multi-data source to world server migration, and there is a table active that I created before just using Oracle SQL Developer in the cluster. Okay, so very simple. After doing that, I deployed a singleton. The singleton is here, my singleton, token service. It's a singleton, it's a fake singleton that is giving a generate token, but a false generate token, okay? And I have a servlet that is using this token. First, the singleton. To deploy the singleton, you go on the cluster, singleton service, and I create the token service singleton. Here, I can see the token service singleton is active, true, is running on WebLogic Server 1. And if I have a problem with WebLogic Server 1, the singleton will migrate to WebLogic Server 2. Okay? I can call the singleton from WebLogic Server 1, and I can call the singleton from WebLogic Server 2. So in this case, with WebLogic Server 2, I'm calling the singleton on WebLogic Server 1. I'm using GNDI to have a lookup to the singleton. It's very, very simple. Okay. So first step, I'm going to crash, not to crash really, but to stop, okay, a node. Or you can have a look on the public IP, but it's not a problem because the DB is only listening on private IP, and you cannot do anything with that. So the first step is I'm stopping the node Rac 1, okay? Just to simulate, for example, on ExaCC, I will have a patch on this node, okay? But I want that there is no problem with WebLogic, okay? So the Rac 1 will stop soon, okay? Just wait a few seconds. Then I'm going to server, and I'm going to close and to stop the web server 1. And remember, the singleton is on the web server 1. Now, okay? Okay, not stop for the moment, but okay, no floating IP, it's finished. I can do the test, okay? So the server 1, migrate, control, server 1, stop, okay? So I'm going to stop the server 1. It's quite fast. I don't think we have to wait a long time, okay? Shutting down, okay? Okay, shutting down. And now it's finished, okay? If I'm going to the server 1, I refresh the URL, and I got nothing. It's normal. Well, now I want to check the singleton. Singleton, token service, control. Oh, very nice. The singleton now is automatically migrated to WebLogic Server 2. Wow, wonderful. And now I need to check. Oh, it's running. It means the singleton has migrated to WebLogic Server 2, and WebLogic Server 2 is using now the singleton on WebLogic Server 2. Okay. If I want to restart, the WebLogic Server 1, then the singleton is on the WebLogic Server 2, and it will be okay because WebLogic Server 1 will call the singleton on the WebLogic Server 2. So as you see, very nice feature, world server migration. I kill a node, okay? Really not a kill, just a stop. But with the multi-data source it's not a problem. Then the whole server migration features run, and the Singleton service went from WebLogic Server 1 to WebLogic Server 2, and I got absolutely no error on my application. You can imagine a load balancer in front of the WebLogic Server 1 and 2, and in case of a crash of a stop of the WebLogic Server 1, then the load balancer will call the WebLogic Server 2, and I will have 0 error. So very nice feature, whole server migration. And remember, with Oracle RAC on ExaCC or somewhere else on premise and so on, you have only 2 options: using active grid link, a single data source, and then it's very simple, but you need a license, or using multi-data source. And in this case, you need 2 data sources, a data source 1 that is communicating directly with the Rac 1, and the data source 2 directly with the Rac 2. Thank you for your attention.